now recording.
Okay. Hello! That's glad I warmed you guys up before they started recording. So this talk is somewhat randomly named Behavioral Security and Offensive Psychology at Scale. I think we're here to give it because we feel very strongly about the things that we do in our career, and we argue about it a lot. And we figured if we could come to an agreement enough to put something in the slides without killing each other.
Barely.
Yeah, well, it was close. You know, there's no one's dead. There are some wounds, many of which will probably never heal. But yeah, so let's get into it. Release the bio slide. Okay, this is our bio slide. Because why use words when pictures are worth so much more? My name's Josh Schwartz. I often go by Fuzzy Knot. I work at Verizon Media. I'm on the security team there, which is known as the Paranoids. I run something called our Proactive Engagement Pillar, and I'm the Director of Offensive Security, aka Red Team. Here with me?
I'm Samantha Davison. I am the Manager of Behavioral Engineering at Lyft under the Information Security and Privacy team. You can find my DJ name, DJ Shoddy D, on SoundCloud.
Okay. All right, so little show of hands exercise, because I know you're here to listen to us talk and you're here for information, but it's actually very useful for us to get some information too. So if we can do a little show of hands exercise, we have a couple questions. We'd appreciate your cooperation. How many people in the room work internally at a company on an internal security team? Not a vendor, you don't provide services? A few enough people. Okay.
Okay. Within your security teams, how many of you have a dedicated security awareness function?
Or know of a company or have a customer that has it?
Cool. Keep your hands raised if you have at least one dedicated full-time person for this effort. I'm surprised. Keep your hands raised if this person also runs your phishing program. Okay, less hands.
Okay. All right, let's try the same thing with Red Team. Who's got a dedicated internal Red Team? Ooh, a little less, okay. And of your Red Teams, since there's so few people, I don't even know if it's worth asking. So people, who's got a Red Team internally? Okay. Folks that have it internally, are you like one of their customers where whenever they do something, considering you're on the security team, they actually debrief you too? Yes? No? Sufficiently less. All right. And if your Red Team is internal, are they like just reporting directly to the CISO, or are they in some other team? Reporting directly to the CISO? Into some other team? You guys quit. Just don't participate. Okay. Let's move on. How many... don't participate. How many people have a Red Team and a security engagement team that are either on the same team or are the same team or work super closely together? Cool. All right.
There's three of us. Yeah.
Yes, no, thank you. Okay, so we're here for this very idea. The idea that not only are Red Team offensive security programs and security engagement programs a core and central part of security and should be kind of everywhere baked in, but that when you combine the two together, it's actually much better.
Better together.
Yes, better together. And our hope is that you will take away some things if you're either starting this, doing this, or ever finding yourself needing to make the justification to try and start one or both of these types of things, that you'll have some extra ammunition and some tips and something to hopefully get you a little further. But of course, everyone's first thought is, like, that's a lot easier said than done, like a 2020 Kanye presidency, right? And I think it's often really tough because we're often seen as a luxury item. Red Team is a It's an expensive luxury item thing that CISOs or CEOs or like a Rolex are like, do I get Rolex or do I get a red team? And we're talking about a dedicated team that's only focused on breaking stuff. When there's so many things that you probably already know are already broken, hiring people just to go around and tell you about more problems is often seen as something really expensive and unnecessary. It's easy to say, hey, we know about enough problems, we don't need a team telling us about it anymore. And security engagement's in a pretty similar state. They often hear things like, okay, well, our humans are trained enough. We don't need anyone doing this. Or the idea of bringing people onto your security staff that aren't technical bug fixers, that are going to be focusing on behaviors and education and security culture, that idea is pretty hard for people to grasp. So if we're ever lucky enough to actually get that investment or find ourselves in that position where someone said, hey, I want this internal thing. I want a red team. I want a security engagement team. We often find ourselves in the place where nobody knows where to put us. So you find security engagement teams and red teams specifically all over the place. I think it's getting a little bit better for red teams, but red teams are often in weird places. I see them in legal, and there's a reason for that. I get it. Like having red teams activities under privilege is good, but then you can't tell people about what you do and you lose a lot of the efficacy. I see them as product security teams, where your red team really just focuses on AppSec bugs, and a lot of times bug bounty can do things like that a lot better. Or you get stuck doing just security review, and you're sitting there not really even doing pen testing. Or worse, and it's driven by this buzzword that I hate, the idea of purple team, right? You got red team reporting sometimes directly into blue team. And that's a little bit of a conflict of interest, but they say, no, it's great because red team is making blue team better. We're doing purple team exercise. We're training them. And that's great. Purple team, it's a buzzword. It's really part of what a good red team actually is. And the idea that blue team is the only customer of red team totally misses the boat. There is so much more you can do from a red team than just train your detection and your incident response and your security controls.
I think it's a little bit worse if you're in security engagement.
Yeah. Often nobody knows where to put you, and when it comes down to it, the place you land is just whoever decided they needed it or had the extra money, I guess.
You don't end up in the compliance org. Due to PCI, HIPAA, Sarbanes-Oxley, and other corresponding requirements for security awareness, compliance is a very popular place to land because someone in compliance decided that they were going to fail an audit without you. But this often gets you, bare minimum, check the box, security awareness. Or, if you're a little bit luckier, you end up within the engineering org. Someone in product security or AppSec decided that it would be good to bring you in. But they often focus your attention on developers, secure dev lifecycle. Being part of the engineering org, it's common nature to want to focus on your own population, but then you end up ignoring the bigger picture, looking at the tree instead of the forest, but there are risks in all areas of the business. Or you wind up with the opposite problem. You educate everyone but engineers because you're not technical enough to talk to an engineer. Oftentimes, being good at teaching courses, presenting, gives you above average social skills, but just because I can throw an awesome event doesn't mean I'm your event planner. Last, just because I can write everything from course material, awareness campaigns, company-wide emails, your blog posts doesn't mean I'm your tech writer. Everyone wants this mythical creature with all these skill sets, but they don't want to pay for it, or consider the incredible rarity of a unicorn. Enter the cycle of security culture doom. First, someone decides that they want you, but because they are often housed within engineering or the technical side of your business, they don't understand what these things cost. Videos don't grow on trees. Gamification sounds cool, innovative in fact, but the platform needed to track all of these actions and points ain't free, and the prizes needed to get people to participate cost even more, especially if your program is successful. Next, expectations for this role border on unrealistic. The person that you hire to run the most effective program must be good at presenting, writing, have possibly the widest breadth of both security and privacy knowledge, sprinkle in some data science for statistical significance measurement, improving efficacy, learning theory to get those knowledge bits to stick, behavioral science to ensure that they can actually modify the behaviors you're looking to change, design, video, and photo editing skills to make things look nice, event planning to get people excited about the shit that you're doing, and on top of all this, you need to be able to think like an attacker to successfully run your phishing program and other simulations. At this stage of the program, either with inadequate funding, those unicorn stables ain't cheap, or you didn't actually find the unicorn to begin with, your program fails to become the prancing success you once envisioned it to be. Lastly, because so few of these programs are ever set up for success, our community views it as flawed and run by soft incompetence.
Look, I'm going to let you finish, but I think the problem is even bigger than this, right? This is something that happens because within the security community, within a lot of the subcultures, red team especially, we don't have consensus on what we are. We don't have consensus on what success actually is. And without that, we spend all our time fighting each other, which is hilarious because I know I spend most of my time fighting people on the definition of red team and stuff like that. So I'm a big part of the problem and a big hypocrite, but that's okay because I sleep just fine at night. We spend so much time arguing about what it should be, we often miss the opportunity to grow it into something new, to say, hey, this should be something much bigger, and instead we usually define what we are based on that place that we landed. And we're sitting there pigeonholed, and we're eating our pigeonhole pie, and we're saying, well, since this is my current truth, that must be the truth, and that must be what red team should be everywhere. That must be what security engagement should be everywhere. And this results in us having a really hard time showing value about what we do. Because when we're trying to sales pitch the value of what we do, and we're coming from a pigeonholed place, the person we're talking to, they might not agree with us, right? So like Kanye here, nobody understands how valuable we really are because we don't have agreement on it.
This isn't even the best sad Kanye meme.
Okay, so we've got this really advanced chart here. If you thought the conjoined triangles of success were something, wait until you see the conjoined squares of fatalistic success synergy between red team and security engagement. Now, we have a lot of things in common, but we also have a lot of things that are different, but some of our weaknesses are very complementary. So, of course, we both lack definition. By coming together, we can define ourselves a little bit more. And, okay, red team, I know a lot of you are really good at phishing, really good at spear phishing, really good at OSINT, really good at getting shell on someone's computer. That's really nice. But you probably have never ran a corporate-wide phishing program that actually measures anything useful or changes anything at scale.
Security engagement people are good at executing phishing in a scalable and repeatable way, but few and far between have actually spearphished someone to get shell.
And then also let's think, red team, I'm sorry to say it, not all of you, quite a few of you though, you're not people. You're computer people, which is good, right? You're technical. You know how to do stuff technically. You're smarter than everyone. It's really great. You know how to breach physical perimeters and pick locks and decrypt things that can't be decrypted. But when it comes to navigating the business and partnering with people and helping educate other people and understanding that folks need a little bit more than just to be told how dumb they are, sometimes we miss the mark.
And because you're not technical enough, if you're in security engagement, you often don't get a seat at the table.
And it sucks. You know, we treat our security engagement people who we expect to be able to do all of these things and know all this stuff and teach everybody the best stuff, but we're not actually giving them the stuff they need to do that. And okay, well, don't even get us started on the vendor marketplace. We'll try not to rant on it too long, but look, it's saturated with mediocrity. It's the truth. And there's a lot of vendors selling a lot of things. The struggles that I've had over the past year trying to find a decent vendor that does red teaming, even though they all say they're amazing at it, no one can seem to grasp the concept of what we're asking for. I don't just want a vuln report. And then there's the phishing vendors, which...
Using the same header for every fish, so you can just filter out all the phishing emails.
Yeah, not super realistic. Also, have you used any of those platforms lately? They're awful. They're not innovating or growing or keeping up with what technology is doing, and everyone else is much... okay. Let's just go to the next slide.
I'm having some bad flashbacks right now.
A little bit. Okay, so hopefully this illustrates that security engagement and red team, it's a pretty obvious alliance, right? Red team can provide that technical acumen. They can provide that knowledge of how the attacks really work. They can provide the experiences of what they learned attacking your specific company, and they can feed that to security engagement. And then security engagement can probably help red team talk to people and actually bake those things into education material. Can you imagine if your red team tests fuel what people are actually taught at new hire orientation? So the good news is this has been done. Like, probably one of the greatest achievements in my career is actually getting this formalized on paper at a company, a big company, and having them take the risk on doing something like this. The team's called Propaganda Machine. Okay, it's not actually called Propaganda Machine. I just wish it was called Propaganda Machine. On paper, it's actually called Proactive Engagement, because that sounded corporate enough to make sense. But I named our Slack channel Propaganda Machine, so every time I look in there, I am happy. But the important part to note here is that it's a core pillar of our security program. I report directly up into our CISO. We've got Red Team, the phishing program. We've got security engagement, all like videos and swag and all the cool security culture stuff that's raising people's awareness in that same team. We also have security education in that team. So we're doing the technical training. And it's all under one umbrella, and we're all working together, and it's great. There's lots of hashtag synergy. The big thing there is that we've got mission statements, and I won't, bore you with them, but the core concept for those is that we're trying to drive behavioral change. And we are trying to run behavioral change campaigns.
And within Lyft, I am on the same team as Red Team in a little team within information security. So we can help each other out.
And there's like 2 or 3 people in the audience who have something similar, maybe. So,
that
okay.
guy right there.
At this point, you're like, well, that sounds nice, good for you, buddy, but what do I do if I don't got any of this stuff? So what to do if you got nothing? It's important to look at how a lot of red teams start, how they get going, and it's that you just go hack stuff, right? Someone has to go do it. So you just go do hacks, do some pretend crime, hopefully with, some air cover, but you show that there's a problem. And then at that point, you start to get momentum. And then the momentum is so often unwieldy, but you can use that to drive change, you can use that to make justification, you can use that to get budget. And then I think this is where most people end up, where they've kind of got this thing, and now people are expecting stuff, and then the really important part, and the really hard part is don't fuck it up too hard.
You could say that both Red Team and Security Engagement operate on a pretty similar platform of behavioral change campaigns. Pretty similar process and then sequence of events, especially if it's done well. First step is setting a clear goal or assumption that you are challenging. This keeps your eye on the prize. It prevents you from boiling the ocean or putting together a mishmash campaign with no real success. Next, you actually need to measure some behavior. Either positive or negative. Figure out in your environment what you need to be able to measure the impact, and then gather this data before you actually start your campaigns. And then last but not least, your strategy for actually operationalizing your campaign and communicating after the fact. This includes readouts, emails to stakeholders, training, assigning remediation tasks, actually ensuring that you have the resources available to remediate before you start your campaign, and then bonus points if this is done in a scalable and repeatable fashion.
Also, good news. We didn't just make this idea up. There is someone who really cares about changing people's behaviors, and they do so for public health and to try and fight disease. It's the World Health Organization. And they've actually got a guide and tips about how to structure health-based behavioral change campaigns. And I just want to read, like they've got our back here, I just want to read to you how they define it and what they say that you should be doing. So a health campaign follows a specific sequence that moves the target audience from awareness of an issue towards a behavior resulting in a specific health outcome. And then they go on to explain a lot of really other useful stuff as well. But if we think about this definition and we replace health with security, we can think of a security behavioral change campaign, something that follows a specific sequence that tries to move our target audience, normally our company, from awareness of an issue, like knowing that they should have a strong password, or knowing that they should lock their computer, or knowing that they shouldn't get phished, towards a behavior resulting in a specific security outcome. That is what we were trying to do here. We were trying to change behaviors to improve security. Additionally, they have some other advice down at the bottom of this page. I just want to key on a few things. I'm not going to read what they're saying about health issues, but if we think about the 3 bullets that they have, right? Involve partners early in the campaign. Think about it. If you're going to go hack something and you want people to support it, you should go talk to the people who are responsible early on, like before you do it, to get buy-in, right? Use trusted messengers. I think this is a really devious thing when we spin it to our thing, but if you think about it, people would respond much better if the leaders in their organizations or people they trust or influencers within your organization are the ones that are telling them that they need to do security stuff rather than the security people telling them. So they make pretty good trusted messengers. And then the last one, ensure availability of community resources. Think about this. This is probably our biggest blunder as security people. We think about all the security problems, and then we go look at all the problems we found, go fix them all. But we don't think about if the resources are actually available for those people to do them. Is there a solution at all? Do the people that you're telling to do something differently actually have access to the right products? Is it even possible? So I think keeping some of these things in mind when we think about changing behavior is going to be really useful for us. Now, executive buy-in. This is something that we all say a lot. It's a pretty great buzzword. It's something that you could probably unpack an entire talk into, which if you caught April's talk yesterday, a lot of it's about that. A whole talk about how do you get people to do what you want. Now, we have this problem, right, where we say executive buy-in, but we don't really know what it means. I think a lot of people might assume that executive buy-in means that someone who is an executive or your boss said okay to something. And that's not executive buy-in, that's approval from somebody. Executive buy-in, I think we could explain it or define it a little bit better as most of the people who have any political power within your organization or any vested interest in derailing your program or your objective or whatever you're trying to do, they all think that your program is a good idea and they support it. Having, or at least most of them, right? Having that is executive buy-in. So I think, and this is Sam's idea, but I'll talk to it. I'll take credit for it, I guess. But executive buy-in is basically a social engineering campaign. If you think about it, right, this should come really naturally to us. If we think about how we get things done inside our organizations, it's enumeration, right? Figure out who the people who might derail your project are. Find them. Figure out what they care about. Regular OSINT works for this, Exploitation. Use social engineering. Approach those folks with a pretext that makes sense to them and try and get them on your side. And then escalation, right? A lot of times in a red team operation, as you're pivoting through things, you use a little bit of access somewhere to get more, and you start with the easiest stuff, the low-hanging fruit first. You can do this in getting buy-in as well. So here's a list of some people that we came up with that you need to make friends with, people that you might need buy-in from, really good partners that are nice to have if you're a red team or security engagement or both, or just if you're security in general. These resources are available to you. So of course, your target, but think about internal comms. There's someone who sends emails out to everybody in the organization. You want to communicate from security? You need them to be your friend. They are the gatekeepers of it. They are the facilitators of it. The learning team. The learning team's responsible for teaching people stuff. They're probably better at it than you. They probably have a platform to do it already. You don't need to go make your own. Onboarding, new hire onboarding, getting people there and getting security messaging right at the start. It's important. You need friends to be friends with them. And of course you need designers and event planners, and that way we don't have to put it all on one person in the security org. People do this stuff at your company already. And of course you should probably bribe procurement because getting vendors onboarded is terrible and the market is so saturated that you're probably going to have to do it a lot to find a good one. And then finance because everyone needs that money, right? Okay. So if you're resource constrained, you're like, I don't got the budget, don't got buy-in, I have no resources. Right? Think about these partnerships and think about how you can do something that is very common tactic in the red team world, right? We call it living off the land. It's the idea that it's a lot more effective, a lot stealthier, and a lot louder outside if we live off the land, if we use the tools that are already baked into the system to accomplish our goals, rather than trying to stage new binaries and stage new tools on there. The same thing works in environments. If we want to create mass security behavioral change at scale, we should use the tools that are already existing in our environment. And the coup de grace, the big goal here, the ultimate goal, is that we want our propaganda, our security content to be integrated everywhere. But ideally, right, it's that main app that everyone uses to socialize. It's that central place that all employees see, that all employees go. If you're going to build security engagement, security awareness, you don't want some side portal off in the distance, like securityengagement.internet.com. You want it baked into the central thing. So if you can take over whatever you use, like if you're Facebook, right? Facebook uses Facebook for work, right? Lots of people use that. That's where you want security content to be, right? If you have a platform internally, you should use it. So also, big bonus points if you can actually measure engagement. There's nothing like creating a security video or a security poster and not even knowing how many people watched it. That's terrible, right? We should do better than that. We should know how many people actually care about watching a video if we make it for security. Okay, so that's a great theoretical, philosophical rant. Sam and I started talking about this stuff quite some time ago, and I was like, I have all these amazing ideas, and she's like, yeah, I did this a long time ago, so I'll let her tell you about that. The realness.
I think I said, don't you even know who I am? At a previous employer, I actually accepted the job there because I had a dream of building out my security engagement material and running it through a very specific company communication channel. Problem, as soon as I joined and shared this idea, I learned that not only had it never been done before, but it was in fact explicitly denied by the biggest boss in the company. I, never backing down from a challenge, considered it to be my greatest social engineering challenge. I began the early stages of enumeration, as Josh described, social engineering, but eventually determined that I was going to need a really good pretext to get the meeting with the big boss, enter collaboration with Red Team. I wanted to ensure that anything I did was driving the biggest impact possible, but I needed what I brought to this meeting to be a home run. I started by creating a phishing risk model to stack rank the potential campaigns that we could do within our environment and make sure that I was selecting the biggest target. Now, I've dedicated a whole talk on this before, so I'm going to do my best to summarize it in a minute here. The idea is this. When you are creating your big list of potential campaigns, you start with a phishing action there on the side, and then figure out which tool you're going to use to get at your specific asset and whether or not that tool has a multi-factor or two-factor authentication gate on it, and then making sure that you're selecting the right target to get at that asset. And if you've done good baselining, you already have a list of susceptibility rankings by employee, and maybe some additional information on whether or not employees within that group are likely to have admin privileges on the tool that you're going after. So, choosing a random example, literally this morning, out of thin air, let's say I wanted the details of a pending acquisition from my company. I might, by running this model, determine that I would like my target, the legal team, to grant Chrome plugin permissions to desktop capture. I think that's a pretty high likelihood of getting the information that I'm seeking. By running this model, I might also determine that I don't want to phish them to capture credentials because Gmail is protected by 2FA and I'm likely not going to be successful. At the time, I determined that we should run an Oauth phishing campaign before it was cool, I might add. At the time, this wasn't something that could be done with a vendor, and it was a really good moment for bringing these two teams together, because what happened after our targets allowed these permissions couldn't have been done by my team alone. Conversely, if the red team were trying to do this on their own, they wouldn't have been able to craft the beautiful lure and pretext that my team could. It was beautiful synergy. Fun fact, later, when that really noisy Oauth phishing campaign heard around the world went around, an employee on in our company reported it in less than 60 seconds. So it was also security engagement win. There we go. Okay. Now that I had that juicy readout from the successful campaign to report on, I went back to my corporate social engineering campaign. I had started with the easiest person within my company to get a meeting with, actually 6 months prior to the ultimate meeting that I had with the big boss of my company. Every meeting that I had from that point on, I went about gathering background information on this tool, the big boss's resistance to using it for the means that I wanted to, and then gathering more intel on the next person that I was going to meet with to continue to gather support and approval for making my dream a reality. I learned that one executive that was really hard to get meetings with often had early morning available slots on their calendar, and they had a penchant for a certain breakfast food. Enter the best social engineering tool of all time, the Egg McMuffin. Friends along the way I met with included design, the procurement team, internal comms. They had also been denied access to this tool for a long time, so my success was going to become their success, so they were really supportive of this endeavor. And then product and engineering, who ultimately were going to need to make the changes that I needed to drive this project forward. I jumped from one person to the next, gathering more support, until I felt like I had met with every single person within the company, and then my big day arrived. I started with my red team readout, and was very quickly granted approval to use this tool for whatever means I saw necessary as the ultimate solution for fixing our behavior problems. Then I was able to conclude my operation and begin the fun part. Celebrating on the roof with a bottle of champagne, of course. With my new permissions and resourcing, I got to do a lot of really cool and experimental security engagement activities. But the ultimate victory of my operation didn't happen until a year later. I mentioned that our employees caught that real Oauth attack, which was a nice quick win. But a year later, when I gathered all of our data, I found that through classifying and calculating all real reported phishing emails, 70% of them were legitimate phishing attacks against the company. That means that our employees were really good at spotting real phishing attacks and reporting them. We also did a campaign with a malicious binary executable. Every single person who actually ran it on their device reported it to our team, which meant that we had a really strong security culture, and that they were able to recognize that they had done something wrong.
So high-level summary of all that, right? It's kind of like a three-step process when you're trying to change behavior. First, it's plan. Use that risk model, brainstorm attack vectors, try and figure out which ones are actually likely, which ones are actually going to have an impact, which ones actually apply to your company, and then determine the required sample size, because some things get polluted when you do it too much, right? Like especially in the world of phishing, the more fish you send out, the less effective it is, but you do need to take a sample size if you're going to measure something, if you're going to actually baseline so that you can see if you change something or not. And then it's execute. Go hack all the things. right? File all the tickets, tell all the people, decide on the changes. This part's really important because you have to do it in partnership with all those people you talked to at the beginning. And then go get buy-in from all the players using your advanced social engineering internal campaign, right? And then modify. She wrote communicate with eloquence, which I think is fabulous. But you have to be able to go engage with everybody. You have to consider how are the executives going to react. You have to consider how are the people who have to do the work going to react. How are the targets going to react. Manage everyone's expectations. But then the big thing is to train the people. Change the processes. Make the adjustments. Modify things. Mitigate the risks you identified. And then repeat the process. Okay, so I left this slide in here mostly so we could get this Kanye meme in there. But I think there's something that is worth mentioning here, and we do have some time. So you guys probably know what the Dunning-Kruger Effect is, but it's an old 1999 psychological principle based on some research that shows that simply people overestimate their own ability by quite a bit. And the less ability they have, the more likely they are to overestimate and also overestimate it by more. So you get this kind of curve like this where you don't know nothing and you're pretty sure you can't do it, but then you start to learn about it and you think you're the best, better than anybody. But then as you gain experience over time and you actually learn everything that's involved, your confidence goes down. You're like, damn, I don't know anything. And we experience this a lot in security and it has a lot of parallels. But one of the things is that we find ourselves in this really initial first part a lot. As security folks, we're all very smart. We think outside the box. We can solve any problem. So whenever we pick up a new problem, we think it's easy. We think design is easy, UX is easy, comms is easy, marketing is easy, data analytics is easy. Stuff's not super easy, right? Some people are devoting everything to it, and their industries are actually a bit more advanced than ours. Like if you think about measuring engagement from things, there's better tools than the phishing platforms we have in our industry. Masha here, shout out to her, she's like, I got a background in marketing, revenue analytics. She's like, there's this tool called Marketo. It's 10 times better than your phishing platform because it can measure all these things that this thing can't. And this highlights really a change that we need to make in the security industry where we start recognizing the power of non-traditional security background type people. Because I think it's a lot easier to teach people about security, at least a baseline level that they need, than it is to teach them this entire field after we join them with basic security knowledge. So let's make security a little bit diverse, not just from a gender or a color standpoint, but from a skill set standpoint so that we can benefit from the learnings that other people have. So
also teach us some powerful lessons on how your team is perceived by other people within your company. Well, not everyone in your team comes from security.
Yeah. The end?
That's the end.
This would be the Q&A point, and if we didn't trigger any questions for you, I hope this slide triggers a couple. Cool, we must have explained everything.
In the keynote this morning, a thing that was brought up was that people that fall for actual legit fishes do real damage to the company, and if they're consistently doing that sort of probably falling for things, the suggestion was to have them removed from the company. Do you have any comments or ideas or idea about that?
I mean, treating people like cancer is one approach, right? Ooh, damn, you're causing pain and suffering into the company, let's just cut you out. I think that's probably more of a symptom. There's
more that can be done to remove choice from the equation, I think, before you resort to terminations, like giving them Chromebooks or removing access to limit the damage they can cause.
Yeah. To see the other side of the argument, though, slightly, I mean, if you think about it, you only probably have to do that once. You know, that's a pretty intense campaign. So maybe you could like fake fire someone for phishing and spread that information around that someone was fired for falling for a phishing thing, so they're afraid. But I don't know if I would do that. It deserves some thought. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So he was saying that it's actually a 3-strike process that was involved, and it's also you mentioned something that I think we didn't quite dive into deep enough, and it's that like you clicked on something. If we talk about that, the saturated vendor marketplace, the majority of phishing vendors. This is actually one of the things that we argued about and how stupid it was, but it ultimately agreed. But we're measuring click rate. Who cares? That's not the state of like modern browsers and computers. Maybe like in the middle of nowhere where everyone's still running IE6, but like clicking on something is just one action. It's what happens after that, what you do after that. Click the link. Like I don't care. Like, let's realize for a moment that the majority of everything you do on the internet is clicking on links. Why are we measuring that? Why are we trying to change click rate? Let's try and change, like, if people do the actual behavior that's bad. Do you enter your creds into a portal? Do you download a malicious thing? Do you reply to an email and give information out?
Do you grant permissions?
Do you grant permissions to an Oauth app that's random? Do you install a malicious Chrome plugin? Like, let's measure things that actually matter. Do you work for a phishing vendor? Okay. So he's saying all the phishing vendors are crap, and it's not a pitch to sell a product that we have, but thanks for maybe buying it. Do you want to answer that?
I wouldn't say that all of them are crap. I have never purchased one in a corporate environment, usually choosing to just do it myself. I find that has many advantages. A, it allows me the full ability to customize my attacks towards what I'm like actually seeing as real attacks in my environment. I get to do more fun things like Oauth phishing that wouldn't have been possible by purchasing a vendor. And there's more. You've heard my spiel a million times. Where am I?
Yeah, I mean, it's often a little bit easier because even when you do deploy,
I know what it was.
Please.
Okay. Many times, these vendors have a handshake with the major email providers to get their emails through to your inbox, which means that you're testing your employees on shit that they wouldn't naturally receive. But if I set up the campaigns myself, I usually spend a month like banging my head on a desk trying to figure out how to get around phishing and spam filters. But the reward is much greater because I know when I go to sleep at night that anyone who receives that email could have received it from an outside attacker, and I didn't cheat the system to test them.
Yeah. There's a big problem in training people to the simulation rather than training them against what reality looks like. I have bought some phishing platforms, and I have a lot of regret.
How do you measure for the executive client? How do you measure the amount of like money that you're saving them by?
In dollars.
Yeah. But like, what's the metric there? Is it like, oh, our campaign was so successful, or is it like if so and so had popped us here or done this thing, it would have cost us X dollars? And how do you quantify that?
I personally don't involve myself in trying to quantify stuff with dollar amounts. While it's probably a good approach, I found it useful to just show that you're giving the business information that is actually actionable, right? like if you're going to show value, often the value of an offensive security program, this is like learned in the trenches of red team, the value of that team isn't finding bugs. I mean, that's nice, but the value is that you're giving someone a view into what's bad and what's good, because as organizations grow, they get so big that you can't possibly know everything. And it's really hard to make decisions. So a big value we can provide is, let's give you data on how people actually behave and what groups or what classifications within our company aren't performing up to standards. Like, who's the worst at phishing? Stuff like that. So I'm trying to show value in like, look, we're going to give you data that's useful, rather than like, we saved you money. Because I think that that level of hand waving is even hard for me.
One of my most valuable metrics is looking at real potential incidents that the company may have had that were thwarted by employees reporting it that was otherwise not detected by any technology that was put in place.
Yeah, look how much you spent on this thing that didn't work. Cool, I think we're at time, so thank you. And that's the end. Bye.